The studio buzzed with the comfortable chaos that always erupted just before live broadcast. Audience members shuffled into their seats, clutching warm cups of coffee from the lobby. Stagehands darted in and out, adjusting cables, clearing lint from the desk, double-checking microphones. The familiar theme music thumped through the speakers, and the audience clapped along automatically, already primed for entertainment. Robert Irwin sat at the edge of the long curved table, smiling that polite, gentle smile he'd learned from years of interviews, though he appeared slightly nervous. He wasn't used to this kind of show, the loud humor, the sharp edges, the constant sparring between co-hosts. But he was here for a reason. He had flown halfway across the world to promote an international conservation initiative. He was prepared to talk animals, forests, ecosystems, hope. What he was not prepared for was Joy Behar at her most mischievous. When the cameras lit up, the hosts launched into their usual quick-fire banter, and Robert laughed along, trying to keep pace. But even in those early moments, he could sense Joy watching him with that glint in her eye, half amused, half ready to push. She loved poking fun at guests, especially the earnest ones. And Robert Irwin, in all his wholesome, wildlife warrior sincerity, was practically a target with legs. "So Robert," Joy said the moment the interview shifted to him, leaning her elbow on the desk with a mischievous grin. "You're back in the States. Still running around with crocodiles. Wrestling snakes. Saving the world one lizard at a time." The audience laughed. Robert smiled politely, though his eyes flickered with mild discomfort. "Well, I don't exactly wrestle crocodiles. Mostly I work on relocation and habitat restoration. And it's not just." Joy jumped back in before he could finish. "I mean really, sweetheart, you're intense about these things. Don't you think you're a bit dramatic for creatures that spend most of the day sunbathing?" The audience laughed again, sensing they were meant to. Whoopi shot Joy a look. Sunny raised her eyebrows. Sarah glanced between them nervously. Robert opened his mouth, then closed it. He adjusted the microphone clipped to his collar, gearing himself. Animals aren't just creatures lying around. They're part of vital ecosystems. Many of them are keystone species. Losing them, Joy waved a hand dismissively. Sure, ecosystems, keystone species, I get it. But the world's falling apart, honey. Politics exploding, climate chaos, and you're out here doing dramatic speeches about frogs. A sharp breath punched through the audience, an instinctive gasp laugh hybrid. Robert's smile faltered. "It's not dramatic, it's urgent," he said, his tone firmer now. "The fires around the world, the droughts, the storms, they're tied directly to the imbalance in nature. It's all connected." Joy tilted her head with that classic half squint she used when she wanted to irritate someone into reacting. "Come on, it's morning TV, lighten up, we're supposed to wake people up, not scare them." Robert's jaw tightened. He tried to stay calm, tried to swallow the rising frustration. He'd handled interviewers who didn't understand the science, who didn't care about conservation, who treated him like a novelty. But this felt different, this felt intentionally dismissive. Like his entire life's mission was a punchline. Sunny tried to intervene. "Joy, to be fair." But Joy continued, "And your father, God rest his soul, he was the same way. Always over the top, jumping on crocs, shouting into cameras. Great TV, but a bit much." The atmosphere snapped. Even the cameras seemed to hum louder in the sudden silence. Whoopi muttered under her breath, "Oh, Lord." Sunny inhaled, sharply. Sarah's eyes widened. Robert froze as if struck. His father's name on Joy's lips with that tone, joking, minimizing, reducing Steve Irwin's legacy to, a bit much, hit harder than anything said so far. Robert blinked once, twice, his fingers curling on the edge of the table. "My father," he said slowly, "died doing what he loved, protecting wildlife. Educating people, fighting to keep this planet alive." Joy shrugged. "Yes, but he was still dramatic." "That drama," Robert interrupted, his voice suddenly sharper, stronger, inspired millions of people. It raised awareness. It changed laws. It saved species. If you think caring deeply is too dramatic, then maybe you don't understand what's at stake. Joy sat back, a little surprised. She hadn't expected him to push back. And certainly not with that fire in his eyes. Robert leaned forward, his voice shaking now, but not from fear. From passion. "We are losing animals faster than we can study them. Species are disappearing. Forests are being destroyed. Coral reefs are dying. And every time someone says we're being dramatic, it delays action. It makes things worse." Joy opened her mouth, but he wasn't finished. And if you think talking about this on morning television is too heavy, he said, then maybe morning television needs to change. A murmur rippled across the studio audience, a mix of shock and admiration. Even the camera operators exchanged glances. Robert took a breath that sounded more like a tremor. I'm not here to be entertainment. I'm here to talk about something that matters. Something that affects every human on Earth. And if that's too intense for this show, then maybe I'm on the wrong show. Backstage, the usually humming labyrinth behind the view had fallen into a strange, weighted hush. Assistants stepped carefully, whispering to each other, all glancing toward the closed door of the small green room where Robert Irwin had retreated. He sat on the couch with his elbows on his knees, palms pressed together, breathing slow and deliberate. His chest still ached with the aftershock of the confrontation. He wasn't angry for himself. It wasn't ego. It was the way Joy had spoken about his father, flippant, dismissive, careless. He'd spent years learning how to handle criticism, but bringing Steve Irwin into it like a talking point for entertainment had cracked something open inside him that he didn't usually let out. A soft knock tapped at the door. Robert lifted his head. Robert, came Whoopi Goldberg's voice, calm, steady, the vocal equivalent of someone handing you a warm blanket. He sighed. Yeah, it's open. Whoopi slipped inside, closing the door behind her as though sealing the room from the buzzing chaos just outside. She walked over and sat across from him, her manner gentle but firm, her eyes carrying the weight of decades spent navigating on-air mayhem. You all right? She asked. Robert shrugged, rubbing the tension from his jaw. I shouldn't have lost my cool. Kid, Whoopi said, leaning forward, you didn't lose your cool. You stood up for your father. And for what you believe in. Sometimes people need a reminder that passion isn't a flaw. Robert gave a weak chuckle. Joy sure didn't agree. Whoopi raised an eyebrow. Joy says things. She pokes. She prods. Sometimes she doesn't know where the line is until she's on the wrong damn side of it. Doesn't make what she said right. Just makes her, Joy. He exhaled and nodded slowly. I didn't want it to blow up like that. She shouldn't have said what she said, Whoopi replied simply. And you shouldn't sit back here forever. Come back, not to fight, just to talk. Let's finish it the right way. Robert hesitated, his stomach tightening at the thought. The audience, the cameras, Joy's expectant look, the unfinished sentence hanging in the air. But something inside him, something that sounded a bit like Steve Irwin laughing through a challenge, said he needed to go back. So he stood, squared his shoulders, and followed Whoopi out. When they returned to the stage, the audience murmured in surprise before breaking into loud applause. Joy stiffened in her chair but clapped lightly along, clearly unsure of what would come next. Sonny offered Robert a sincere, relieved smile. Sarah stood as he approached and gestured for him to retake his seat. Robert sat down, still composed but visibly determined. Joy cleared her throat, the tension swirling around her like static. Before she could speak, Robert lifted a hand gently. I'd like to say something first, he said. The audience quieted immediately. The crew leaned in. Even Joy froze. Robert took a breath, the kind that resonated from deep inside. I care about animals because they matter. I care because losing them hurts all of us, even if we don't see it right away. And when someone makes light of that, intentionally or not, it sends a message that it's not important. Joy watched him with an expression he rarely saw on her. A mixture of defensiveness, guilt, and a flicker of something close to respect. She opened her mouth to respond, but Robert kept going. In bringing my father into it, his voice wavered slightly, but he steadied it. My dad dedicated his life to protecting wildlife. He inspired me. He inspired millions. When you diminish his work, even as a joke, it hurts. Not just because he's gone, but because everything he fought for is still at risk. Sonny's eyes softened. Sarah clasped her hands tightly on the table. Joy inhaled slowly, her usual sharp retort nowhere to be found. She sat up straighter. Robert, she said, her voice surprisingly measured, I went too far. I know I did. Sometimes I joke first and think second. You're right, I shouldn't have brought your father into it like that. Robert studied her face, analyzing whether the apology was genuine. It was. Joy, for all her flaws, didn't fake apologies. When she messed up and she felt it, she owned it. I appreciate that, Robert said quietly. Joy exhaled through her nose, some of her usual spunk returning. And for the record, I wasn't trying to insult your father. I watched him for years. I adored him, but I joke about everyone. That's my thing, and sometimes, my thing's a bit much. The audience laughed lightly.